Are your secrets secret? Are your secrets really secret? Or maybe should I ask, are your secrets secret enough? Those are tough questions, tricky one. If you are at the beginning of your IT career, it may be even difficult to understand them properly. But to be honest with you, later it's not much easier. And my goal during this presentation is tell you a bit about this topic, describe it, and maybe help you understand those questions and answer them at the end of this meeting. But of course, only if you currently feel some confusion regarding them. But before we start talking about the main topic of today's presentation, let me shortly introduce myself. As you heard, I'm Kamil. Some of you already know me, but for those who don't, professionally, I build pipelines. And I also like to use the helm, but I'm not a plumber, I am not shipmaster or even a sailor, I'm just a DevOps. To be a bit more specific, my IT career I started 10 years ago, at the beginning as a software developer with Python, then Java. 6 years ago, I changed my position to DevOps role. Currently, I am head of DevOps at Asaisoft. I like to use Kubernetes, cloud services, and stuff like that. What are secrets? Pretty easy question. And probably everybody of you knows what they are. And some time ago, I even asked the question to my daughter, and she said that those are things that no one can say, which is really good definition, but unfortunately, for purposes of this presentation, this definition is a bit too wide. So let me narrow down it a bit. So secrets, our current context, secrets which we're gonna talk about, is a type of configuration values with sensitive data which require careful management, such as passwords, keys, and tokens. And probably the most important thing, which I would like to highlight, is that secrets are also configuration. A bit specific, but configuration. And because of this reason, we are here today, and I'm talking about secrets. This meeting is configuration management in cloud-native solutions. So, and moreover, because secrets are also configuration, all information shared by Szymon and Maciej are also valid for secrets. There will be small differences on which I would like to focus and maybe explain this topic from a bit different perspective, me as a DevOps, and share some knowledge. Yeah, so as I said, secrets is also configuration. So let me give you a short example. What does it mean? Probably you still remember this slide. This is one of Szymon's slides about config value classification. And we can do some exercise and think how it may look like for secrets. And it will be very similar to this one, with just only one small difference. When we talk about secrets, we only talk about sensitive data. We don't have insensitive data when we're describing secrets. Okay. So yeah, I think a lot how to properly present you this topic. And I decided to tell you a story. So, long ago, when I was baby software engineer, I started a new project. So I chose my favorite programming language, which was Python at the moment. I chose DB. You know, each serious project has to use DB. It was so long ago that the only rational choice for database was relational database. Yeah, and I started development. And quick notice, today I will present you some pieces of code, but if you don't like Python syntax or you just don't like to looking at code, you can ignore them, just listen to me and focus on the story. It should be enough to understand the message which I would like to share with you today. Okay, so let's go back to my project which I started. So yeah, I started with some very simple function to connect to database, to set up connector. Then, using this function, I created a connector. But to create a connector, I had to put some configuration, like hostname, username, password, and so on. So yeah, I did this in main function. I put everything here. I hard-coded it. Then I executed some important operations on my DB. And I put the whole configuration here, even password. Yes. I did this, but please don't judge me. I was young, I was naive. I needed money, just joking. Yeah, so we can say that it was my approach -1. You may ask why -1. As a software developer, I'm counting from 0. But this solution was so bad that I decided to count it from -1. So solution -1 is hard-coded configuration. Today I will present a few more examples, few adjustments which I made to my hypothetical project. And small digression here, I will try to evaluate those solutions. And for evaluation, I will use pain measurement scale. Probably familiar with pain measurement scale. It's a very simple one. We have 5 levels, starting with unspeakable, through intense, moderate, mild, to the no pain, where no pain is our goal, where we talk about secrets. Okay, so let's go back to my approach -1 with hard-coded secrets. And my evaluation for this approach is unspeakable. It was so bad that, you know, it's hard to describe even how bad it was. But after Szymon's presentation, you know why we shouldn't do this. And moreover, you know how to do this better. And so I also knew that. And I decided to improve my code. And first thing which I decided to change was change this hard-coded piece. Yeah, I decided to extract my configuration to dedicated file. So I prepared config file. So it was Python, so I created config.py. I put all values here. Then I refactor my main function. So I imported this configuration and used them in main function. But at that moment, it's not big difference, yeah? I still have hard-coded configuration, but I only change place where it was. At the beginning it was in main function, now it's in config file. So what, yeah? So I also decided to do one more improvement here. So I implemented approach which allowed me override default values by environment variables. And I kept the original values as a default one. And one more adjustment for password, I removed default value. And from my perspective, this approach allowed me to store this file in repository. So maybe it doesn't look like huge change, but because of that I removed my secret from source code, now it is safe to store it in repository. So great improvement in my opinion, like at the beginning. So let's evaluate it. Approach number 0, config file plus environment variables. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but number 0 pretty well fits here because we are talking about secrets management, yeah? But I just removed my secret from source code, so I don't have any secrets in my code, so I don't manage them. So 0 is okay. And evaluation, intense, yeah? Still a lot of to do. I have to figure out the way what to do with my secrets, how to configure them. So what is the next step? What was the next step? I decided to go to production. So to go to production, I chose my environment. As you heard, I really love Kubernetes, so I decided to use Kubernetes to set up production environment. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Kubernetes, but to run some application in Kubernetes, you have to, actually you run containers, Docker containers, in a nutshell. And to configure it properly, you have few options. And when your application is ready to grab environment variables for configuration, actually you have 3 options to do this. You can configure those environment variables when you define how would you like to run your container, in pod definition, in development definition, or you can use other Kubernetes objects to do this, such as config maps or secrets. And secrets are dedicated for secrets. So, knowing that, I decided to create Kubernetes secret object to keep my password for database and then use it for my production deployment. So I created such file with secret definition, with password. This part is important, how it is defined. We have string data with plain text password. There is other option to do this. Here it is. We can, instead of using string data, we can use data. And this is not encrypted. This is just encoded. And yeah, so from security perspective, it's pretty much the same, no big difference, but at least look nicer. So I decided to use this version. And it was my approach number 1, which is secrets in config repo. And probably I should add here another small digression, because I said something like secrets in config repo. And this digression, which I would like to describe, is some kind of convention which I really like to use, which is code repository versus config repository. Code repository is a place where we store our application code, and config repository is repository when we can store configuration. Pretty obvious, I know. And why I really like this approach? It works pretty well when you have modern application which use multi-service architecture, and each microservice has its own repository. So then, using such approach, you can just create one place, grab all configuration in one place, and put it on that environment which you need. I have one more diagram to better explain how it works in practice. So when you use this convention, we have 2 groups of users. We have developers and DevOps. Developers are responsible to develop new features, create some code, and push them to the code repository, application repository. Then we have some kind of pipeline, CI/CD tool, which grab our code, build it, and push it to Docker registry. On the other side, we have DevOps. DevOps manage configuration. So it can push new piece of configuration to our config repository. And we have our running environment, which in my case was Kubernetes. And in real world, we have somehow connect those two sides, registry with configuration. And real life example is presented here. So there exist some tools which can do this for us. And on Kubernetes currently exists at least two options. One of them is Flux, the second Argo CD, which can grab Docker image from Docker registry, then check configuration from our config repository, and apply everything on our running environment. Okay. So the whole approach with those two kind of repositories looks like that. So let's go back to my approach 1, secrets in config repo, and score, moderate. So it's not so secure because we keep it as a plain text in repository, but we improved something, yeah? We have some kind of management because our secret now is defined somewhere in our repository. We have a lot of possibility to apply it to our environments. We also, compared to the first solution, when I kept my configuration, my secrets in code repository, we decreased the visibility of these secrets. Because now, using separate repository, we can manage access to this repository. Yeah? So we can grant access only for DevOps. It's like we can forbid access for developers. Yes? So from my perspective as a DevOps, it's great. Okay. But as I said, this approach wasn't secure, secrets was unencrypted, so I decided to do next improvement. And so it was unencrypted. The next improvement should be obvious, yeah, so let's do some encryption for this. So my environment was Kubernetes. I had secrets, like everything was ready to use secrets, Kubernetes secrets to configure my application. And what is the best way to do this? There are many ways to do this. The one which I chose, I used tool named Seal Secret, pretty nice tool, which it's kind of application which you can set up on your cluster. And this application is responsible to, based on some custom resources, which are YAML files, and those resources keep encrypted secrets, and based on such definition, they can create secrets objects, Kubernetes secrets objects, as before. So like the same object will be created, but not based on secrets YAML, but based on some custom definition, custom resource. One more nice thing about Seal Secret. Seal Secret uses asymmetric keys. From my perspective, big advantage, because locally, as a DevOps developer, you can encrypt your secrets using public key. Even more, you can store this public key in your repository. There is no risk. And only agent which works on the cluster side will be able to decrypt them. Sounds pretty safe. So here's an example how it looks in practice. So as I said, some piece of custom resource, Seal Secret, in here, and we have password, which is encrypted, much bigger than previously, yeah, so probably safer. And this was my approach number 2, encrypted secrets in config repo. I'm not sure if you already noticed, but approaches which I'm describing, those are just group of solutions. It's not like one single solution which I'm presenting. For example, here, when I'm talking about encrypted secrets in config repo, using such approach, following such approach, we may do this in many different ways. I used sealed secret, but we can use just other kind of keys. We can use some services, cloud services, to encrypt and decrypt stuff. Other useful tools, SOPs. So for those who use Kubernetes, probably you are familiar with this one. But the important thing is just these approaches are only group of solutions, and we can assign many different versions of this. And for this approach, where we store encrypted secrets in config repo, pain score is mild, in my opinion. Okay. We had this approach. I had this approach, so I thought what I can do better. Yeah, what else I can improve? And as I checked, there exist a lot of dedicated services to store secrets. Probably you are familiar with some of them, such as HashiCorp Vault, Secrets in Azure Key Vault, AWS Secret Manager, GCP Secrets Manager. Probably there will be more, but those which I said are the most popular. So the next improvement which I decided to introduce was to use one of them, yeah, to increase the security. And the question was how to do this in my setup which already existed, yeah? Because I had running environment, Kubernetes, I had way how I can configure my application, and now I decided to introduce different store for my secrets. And the way which I figured out was to use Secret Store CSI driver. It's pretty useful tool if you would like integrate services which store secrets, as I said, HashiCorp Vault, Secrets in Azure Key Vault, and so on, with Kubernetes. Because this tool allows you to create Kubernetes secrets based on the definition and based on the values which you store in those services. So I installed this tool on my cluster, I configured it, and then I used it. And here's the example, how it looks. 3 important pieces in this code. The first one is the location, key vault name, where is the origin of my secrets. Then there is query, how to get values. And then is definition, how to transfer those values to the Kubernetes object. And yeah, this was my approach number 3. Secrets in a dedicated service. And how do you think? Have I achieved no pain score at that moment? At the beginning, I was pretty impressed by this solution. But when I started to think about this, how difficult it was to configure it properly, how big entry level it was. Finally, it works pretty well, but entry level is pretty high. And because of this, I may say that score is mild, maybe mild plus, but some pain still left, unfortunately. Okay, I presented you 5 different approaches, how I manage secrets in my project. And I think a lot what I can give you during this presentation, what outcome you can take. And I decided to prepare some simple checklist to check where are you with your secrets. what is the current state, and what are potential next steps which you can take. So yeah, I prepared it. I divided it to two pieces, two parts. So the first part is some summary, where I can say what you shouldn't do with your secrets. So when you manage secrets, in my opinion, so we can discuss this, yeah, because it's my personal opinion. Some best practices which works for me, but in only some cases. So usually you shouldn't overuse secrets. What I mean by that? So if something is configuration and it's safe to store it as a configuration, store it as a configuration. Less secret, less pain to manage it. Pretty obvious. Don't hard code. I already explained this one, so nothing more to add. Hard coding is always bad practice, and Szymon also said a lot about this, so don't do this also for secrets. And I think that you shouldn't store them in a code repository. For microservices architecture and multiple repo approach, I feel like I can explain why I think that. But you may ask, what if we have monorepo approach? What then? Even then, I think it's still better to store them separately, because storing them separately, the big advantage of that is that we can decrease access to it. So this is the main reason why I think that way. And the second part, what you can do with your secrets. Okay, so you can, maybe you should, use environment variables. This is kind of standard, how to configure your application. If you're familiar with 12-factor up standard approach, the one of points says about how to manage configuration. And they're talking that the good approach, pretty well scalable, is to use environment variables. So I highly recommend to use the same for secrets. Use single source of truth. And Szymon already explained this, why it's a good approach. And the same is for secret, yeah? When you have single source of truth, it's easy to manage, so just do this. Limit access. To keep something secret, if less people has access to it, it's higher possibility that it will stay secret longer, yeah? So limit access is always a good option. Encrypt. When you talk about secrets, we may mention two types of encryption. At rest and in transit. So when you consider some tools, some solution, you should just check if your approach will follow this standard. If your approach provide encryption at rest and in transit. If yes, you are safe to use it. The next one, monitor access. To detect possibility if your secrets were compromised or used improperly, it's good to monitor and verify who was using them. And last, probably not least, rotate. Szymon said a lot about rotation, how important it is, and I totally agree. Everything what he said is true. What I may add for rotation. From my perspective, I can tell you about 3 reasons to rotate secrets. The first one is when you have some time-valid secrets, like password, which is only valid for 30 days, or tokens, which is only valid for some period of time. So after that time, you have to provide new version. So for this, you need some mechanism to update them. And probably what I should add also about when I'm talking about rotation, we can divide this topic into 2 pieces. The first piece is how we get new version. Because if we are providing this new version, and if we use some service to store secrets, sometimes such service may offer rotation. So we can configure, and this service will, for us, create a new version if needed. So this is the first piece. And the second piece is how to provide new version of our secret to our application. And Szymon said a lot about this. Pipeline. Some tools, some approaches can give you this out of the box. Other will require a lot of effort to provide this. Approaches which I presented at the end, when I used CSI driver for secret, this option, like to provide new version to my application, it was out of the box. When I configured, this value immediately occurred in my running application. But if I will choose other solution, it may require like create additional pipeline to do this. So it's always worth to consider what you have, what to offer in this. And this is the final checklist. You can use it. You can check where you are with your secrets. And my proposition here is to do some really small exercise. Let's go through my solutions which I presented to you and check this checklist for them. It should be pretty quick. So the first solution which I showed was hard-coded configuration. And what I can check for this solution. At the beginning, I was thinking that probably nothing. But after some time, I figured out that, yeah, I had only one secret. And only this secret I treat as a secret. So I don't overuse secrets. So it was completed at this approach. The next one, config value with environment variables. So what this approach added to my checklist. This approach added few things. The first one, after that, secrets wasn't hard-coded, and I haven't stored them in code repository, and I used environment variables to define them. Next approach, secrets in config repo. This approach added two things. Using it, I used single source of truth because my secrets were defined in config repository. And I also limited access. So only I was able to limit access. Maybe I haven't limited it because earlier I haven't managed secrets, so it wasn't even required to limit access. Next solution, encrypted secrets in config repo. Pretty obvious, I added encryption. And the last, secrets in dedicated service. And this approach added for me monitoring for access, because secrets in Azure Key Vault supports audit logs, so I can check who accessed my secrets. And it also added some kind of rotation feature, but only half of it, because if you remember, I mentioned about these two pieces. New value and the way to provide. Azure secrets in Azure Key Vault doesn't provide like out-of-the-box functionality to generate new value. You may overwork this. You may prepare some, let's say, Azure function to create new value, but it's not off the box. Some services support this. But approach with CSI driver allowed me to provide new values automatically to my pod. So half of the feature was there, ready. And yeah, this is my story. This is everything. Thank you. And if you have any question, I am here to answer them. If you don't have, as other guys, I will be there, so please just ask me when I will be walking around. Thank you.